During her early years at Versailles, Marie Antoinette discovered the workings of the most sophisticated, yet also the most rigid, court in Europe. Several thousand courtiers lived there under the constraints of etiquette, a codified system that quickly became the young Dauphine's nightmare.
She truly discovers what the duty of representation of a sovereign in France is, meaning this rule of the constant visibility of sovereigns that was created by Louis XIV, and which implies that all the movements of her day are planned in advance and then arranged like real ballets.
A Dauphine must do this, must do that, or conversely, a Dauphine is forbidden from giving free rein to her desires.
She encounters a whole system of rules and principles. For instance, when she asks for a glass of water, it first has to pass through the first lady who requests it from the second lady. Then they will ask a servant to go get the water. So that takes 15 or 20 minutes. All this frustration also comes from her childhood, spent at the court of Vienna, at Schönbrunn, where she had a lot of fun. She was raised in a fairly bourgeois manner, without too many protocol constraints.
Very early on, Marie Antoinette also understands that her presence is not unanimously accepted within the aristocracy. Her marriage to Louis Auguste, the Dauphin of France, future Louis XVI, seals the reconciliation between France and Austria, enemies for 200 years. It is King Louis XV and Marie Antoinette's mother, Empress Maria Theresa, who worked for this rapprochement.
A part of the court views Marie Antoinette as an agent of Austria. Very quickly, the nickname the Austrian will emerge. This shows the deep hostility from a large part of the nobility, the high nobility, towards this alliance, and she is the result of this Franco-Austrian alliance. And she was the victim of it, it must be said.
Yet, a few years earlier, in the spring of 1770, the meeting between Marie Antoinette and her future subjects takes place under the best circumstances. As she arrives in France for the first time, the young girl is amazed by the welcome the population gives her.
Marie Antoinette's arrival in France is nothing but a long parade of joyful cries, festivities, and cheers. She is exhilarated by the welcome of the French people.
She is greeted everywhere with triumphal arches, flowers, young girls presenting her with bouquets. She is radiant with joy to be welcomed in such a way.
One could even say that Marie Antoinette, when she arrives, is popular. People love her youth, they love her freshness, and they place in her the hope for a renewal, for a magnificent, reconstituted monarchy.
For the first time in a very long time, the French have a pretty future queen who pleases them, who is young, who meets their expectations.
Marie Antoinette is only 14 and a half at that time, but her appearance and demeanor immediately charm the French people.
She is tall, she is slim, she has a very beautiful posture, she has a large forehead, very soft blue eyes, and an absolutely charming smile.
Marie Antoinette has many physical assets, notably her porcelain complexion, that is extremely admired. It should be noted that the whiteness and almost transparency of the complexion was nearly an obsession in the 18th century, but she also has flaws, a slightly disdainful lower lip, which always gives a little pout.
She is not very beautiful in the face, but she has infinite charm. A slight German accent. She is truly adorable.
One can clearly see what we would call a teenager today. That is, a young girl who is developing, who is understood that she has a very heavy political mission to accomplish. She doesn't necessarily understand all the ins and outs.
Louis XV deployed all the necessary pomp to mark the major political event represented by this alliance with Austria. At Versailles, the wedding festivities begin with a nuptial blessing in the royal chapel. They continue in a brand new performance hall completed for the occasion.
It is on May 16th, 1770, that the Royal Opera is inaugurated, and it is inaugurated not with a show, but with a feast. A royal feast, the wedding feast of the future Louis XVI with Marie Antoinette. All the guests are gathered around a large table set up approximately beneath the ceiling here, with 21 place settings presided over by the king. All members of the royal family and a portion of the princes and princesses of the blood take their places, while the entire court, the ambassadors, everyone is gathered around and in the boxes to watch what truly is a spectacle. The Royal Opera House, due to its size, is an exceptional theatre because it is the largest court theatre remaining in France and was also considered the largest theatre at the time. It can accommodate 1,300 and 1,400 spectators.
For this wedding, the opera also hosts the performance of a tragedy by Loli, followed by a grand ball, an extremely well-organized event.
The king successively names pairs of dancers who parade 2 by 2, one behind the other, in order of protocol. The Dauphine opens the ball and so on, descending further and further. And it's really the etiquette ball, meaning there are more spectators than dancers. There are only 2 dances there. The minuet, which is the royal dance par excellence, and the contredanse, which developed over the course of the 18th century. Except that in 1770, the young Dauphine, who is nevertheless an accomplished princess, does not sufficiently master the steps of the contredanse. So she is going to dance a minuet, of course, in front of the entire court. Imagine what this young girl might feel becoming the centre of attention, especially while dancing. And a small exception will be made to the formal ball etiquette. She'll be allowed to dance an allemand, which is another dance she mastered. And everyone marvels at the grace of the young princess.
But the honeymoon is short-lived. Facing hostility from some members of the court and the etiquette she finds too strict, the young Marie Antoinette strives to create her own circle of intimates.
Marie Antoinette is profoundly isolated within the royal family, even where she could have legitimately found support, found allies. She finds herself totally isolated and even, one could say, stigmatized.
She especially searches for distraction and fun. She is looking for youth. She is eager for affection.
The Princesse de Lamballe has everything in common with Marie Antoinette. They share the same foreign origins. They both hold the rank of princess. They have a similar education.
The Princesse de Lamballe is a fairly pretty young woman, delicate, with very fragile health, who is not very intelligent.
She also has great sensitivity. She is very impressionable. It is said that she faints as soon as she sees a crayfish, for example.
She charmed the young Marie Antoinette with her gentleness, and Marie Antoinette is drawn to this character because of the intimacy she can establish with this princess.
This friendship is really something quite strong, quite deep, like what Marie Antoinette is looking for. She wants to have someone to whom she can open her heart.
Marie-Thérèse de Savoie-Carignan, born in Turin, belongs to one of the wealthiest families in France. She married the Prince of Lamballe, son of the Duke of Penthièvre and heir to a branch of the royal family. When she meets Marie Antoinette, The princess lives in her father-in-law's private mansion in Paris, the Hôtel de Toulouse, which has now become the seat of the Banque de France. It is there, in this magnificent golden gallery, that the dinner for her wedding took place a few years earlier.
There are 3 tables, 130 guests, with all the elite of the court. All the princes of the blood are present, and with the most extraordinary adornments, it sparkles with diamonds. The gallery is illuminated by thousands of candles, by lanterns, and the Princess of Lamballe discovers this absolutely extraordinary place. The inspiration for this golden gallery is the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, with its mirrors and gilded woodwork. The well-known sculptor Versailles is going to carve a whole collection of terrestrial and marine animals. So for the terrestrial animals, there are boars, deer. For the sea animals, there will be crustaceans, lobsters, crayfish. This gallery is 40 meters long, 6.5 meters wide, and 8 meters high under the ceiling. The Hall of Mirrors at Versailles is twice as large in almost all dimensions.
If the place is sumptuous, the atmosphere of the dinner is rather gloomy. The princess's father-in-law is in mourning after the death of his mother.
Even the most cheerful people at court are not as joyful as usual. So, there is a certain shadow hanging over this dinner. Without being perhaps completely gloomy, the dinner is not the most cheerful, and it is not the best introduction for this young princess who has just discovered Paris and her husband.
The princess especially discovers the personality of her husband, one of the most famous libertines of the 18th century, who left her with a peculiar legacy.
He is a young man who claims his sexual freedom and collects female conquests, who is used to going to the brothel. That is to say, he is a man with extremely advanced libertinism.
A highly controversial character, debauched, who dies after 16 months of marriage, having contracted various diseases that we would today call sexually transmitted, to the point that he passed them to Madame de Lamballe, his wife.
At 19 years old, the Princess de Lamballe finds herself widowed, without children, and thus fully available for Marie Antoinette. She divides her time between Versailles and the residences of her father-in-law, the Duke of Penthièvre. She regularly stays at her property in Rambouillet, where he created an English-style garden and built a cottage with an extraordinary aquatic decoration.
The walls are punctuated with niches and pilasters that mimic ancient architecture, but are made entirely of shells. There are clams, scallops, oysters, mussels, winkles, and other species. And then, especially, you have this vault made of inlaid pieces of mother of pearl, bringing preciousness and brightness to the room. The same mother of pearl is used on the mirror above the fireplace. Normally mirrors are made of glass, but here it's with this mother of pearl. All these shells came from the estates of the Duke of Penthièvre. He had castles all over France. There are shells that come from his residence in Nogent-sur-Seine, where there were mussels, especially from the Seine, that could be collected. And then he also had the Château d'Eu in Normandy, which allowed him to bring many shells from Dieppe. And finally, he was the Grand Admiral of France, so he controlled all the French fleet's ships, which allowed him to also bring in shells from much further away, notably from the West Indies, which helped complete this decoration.
With Princess de Lamballe, Marie Antoinette finds a confidant with whom she can open up, but she is also an accomplice in all her daily activities.
They share rather light, somewhat frivolous concerns. They like to chat, converse together. They enjoy mocking the older courtiers, but after all, They are among the few young faces at the court of Versailles.
They play music, they sing, they go for walks, many walks, all of this surrounded by others. It is a way of living freely that Marie Antoinette claims, avoiding rules, restrictions, avoiding too many constraints.
Among the activities that Marie Antoinette enjoys, there are sleigh rides that the young woman brings back into fashion as soon as the snow covers Versailles.
Marie Antoinette was the first to announce who would have the privilege of leading her, along with a few other princesses. And then, lots were drawn. Obviously, this led to surprises and laughter. And then the whole group embarked on long walks. They went from castle to castle, from La Muette to Moudon, even to Rambouillet in a sled. Then Tehi had a warm snack, warmed themselves in the castle salons before returning to Versailles at nightfall. It was truly magical, also due to the inspiration from these sleds, which form a kind of strange and fabulous bestiary with mermaids, dragons, turtles, or even the leopard, as seen here, which is undoubtedly one of the most spectacular. Very naturalistic, you see it like that, ready to pounce with its bulging eyes, its mouth open. And this is explained by the fact that it was sculpted and painted in imitation of nature, modeled after the leopard that lived during Louis XV's time at the great exotic menagerie in Versailles, right next door.
Marie Antoinette loves to entertain herself, but her mother, the Empress of Austria, Maria Theresa, has other ambitions for her.
For Empress Maria Theresa, her children are little pawns, little soldiers. They must work for the greatness of the empire and Austria. She often says to her daughter, "Be a good German, be a good German."
Marie-Thérèse placed a mentor with her daughter, who is her own ambassador, the Count of Mercy Argenteau. And he writes regularly to the Empress to keep her informed of the slightest blink of Marie Antoinette. She knows everything about Marie Antoinette through her ambassador.
Marie Antoinette doesn't really want to be a good German. Politics doesn't interest her. It's quite understandable. She's very young. She wants to please, to have fun, to grow, but not to engage in politics. Madame de Polignac is dazzlingly beautiful, even more beautiful than Madame de Lamballe. She has blue eyes, brown hair, a beautiful smile. Everyone is enthusiastic about Madame de Polignac.
She reminded one of Raphael's virgins. She was not at all a saintly woman, but she had that angelic face, large brown curls, a perfect oval.
She claims to be very idle, not interested in much. She claims to be lazy and claims to always keep a distance from others. And that's probably what charmed Marie Antoinette.
Madame de Polignac married Count Jules de Polignac, who was a provincial aristocrat. They are not courtiers.
The Count of Polignac is completely broke, so the couple does not live at court. They cannot afford it, and generally live on their estate in Brie, and he only rarely comes to court.
Quickly, Marie Antoinette prefers the company of the Countess of Polignac, who supplants the Princess of Lamballe in the Queen's inner circle.
The Duchess of Polignac is very funny. She is very witty, while still knowing her place, and she is infinitely more entertaining than the Princess of Lamballe. She accompanies the Queen to the ball and everywhere. She hosts parties very willingly. The Princess of Lamballe also hosts parties, but people laugh much more at the Duchess of Polignac's, that's clear.
In Marie Antoinette's eyes, Madame de Polignac is a very free, very liberated woman. On one hand, she is married, she has 2 children, and then she has several lovers which she does not hide. To Marie Antoinette, because she is the Queen of France, all this, obviously, is inaccessible and forbidden to her, and in some way, indeed, Madame de Polignac represents this model of a free woman, a liberated woman who does what she wants.
To keep her favorite close to her, Marie Antoinette has an apartment arranged for her at Versailles. But Madame de Polignac does not come alone. She brings along her entire clan.
If the Duchess of Polignac is a woman that generally receives praise, the same cannot be said about her sister-in-law, the formidable Diane de Polignac, who is like a kind of harpy whose sole concern is to accumulate the maximum advantages for her family and clan.
Diane de Polignac will understand that the Countess of Polignac could be the one who will know how to capture Marie Antoinette's attention and obviously derive the maximum benefits.
So the Count of Polignac becomes a colonel of the king's regiment, receives a pension, becomes a hereditary duke, and will be given the management of the stud farms.
When Madame de Polignac married off her 13-year-old daughter, Marie Antoinette secured a dowry of 800,000 livres for her, which was absolutely outrageous. And all the friends of the Polignacs and their friends received either annuities or benefits of any kind.
The Polignacs, when they meet Marie Antoinette, are almost poor. In just a few months, they become one of the leading fortunes of the court.
When much later, Marie Antoinette becomes a mother, she even grants the Duchess of Polignac the title of governess of the children of France. Although the Princess of Lamballe is now in the background, she retains her prestigious role as the Queen's superintendent. All these privileges are granted with the King's agreement.
One of the great mistakes of the king was to yield to his wife. Marie Antoinette is generous, she is naturally good, she wants to please, and Louis XVI wants to please his wife, and from there, it leads to catastrophes. And I say catastrophe since the system of the court is being destroyed. And it was a fragile system, finely tuned. There could be promotions, regressions, disgraces, but all of this must be done very discreetly.
The king is also very tolerant of certain activities of his wife, particularly her consuming passion for gambling, which she shares with her new friends. While there has been a lot of gambling for a long time at the French court, Marie Antoinette favors a certain type of entertainment.
Marie Antoinette does not play much of what are called trading games. It's the games where there is an element of chance, but also an element of gaming, of reflection, which are rather favored by Louis XVI, like quadrille. She mostly likes pure games of chance, such as faro. That is, games where there is no thinking about how to play, but where you have to bet. And they often bet very, very large sums of money on cards. These are cards that may seem quite modest, but in fact, at the time, there are no luxury games. That means at the court, people play with these cards, just as they do in Paris, in gaming rooms or at private homes. Money is played directly, or even chips bearing the player's arms. So, these are tokens painted on ivory on both sides with extremely pretty designs, flowers, insects, birds, and more or less abstract patterns. There are several different shapes depending on the value given to them. There are round ones, rectangular ones, or smaller ones like this one. Marie Antoinette gambles a lot of money in the faro game and loses a lot. At one point, she has over 400,000 livres in debt, which is more than twice her annual allowance.
There was a memorable game during which they played for almost 36 hours, and the Queen missed All Saints' Day Mass on the 1st of November. It was explained that the game had been too intense too extraordinary, and that it lasted much longer than expected.
Marie Antoinette is intoxicated by gambling, by money, and the king must, of course, pay the bill when she loses money.
With this attitude considered careless, the queen quickly provokes criticism and gossip from the old courtiers. Their names are Vaudreuil, Lauzun, Coigny, Esterhazy, Artois, or Besenval. All are accomplished aristocrats, but they are also known as the Queen's favorites, men who know better than others how to showcase and enchant her.
They generally have a quite virile appearance because Marie Antoinette lives in an idealized world, the world of Trianon. And in this idealized world, the man is part of the setting and should be the most attractive.
They all have in common that they are generally very tall, very handsome, and have a lot of presence. She is sensitive to appearances. She is also drawn to masculine figures that reassure her.
In fact, this male entourage almost forms a court within the court.
With each of them, Marie Antoinette maintains very special ties.
Count Esterhazy will be the confidant, the one with whom she can talk about intimate subjects, because she knows he is both virtuous and possesses unwavering discretion.
The Duke of Lauzun is a little older than she is. He is handsome. He's the international Don Juan. And they go horseback riding together. During hunts, he is always beside her.
With the Count of Vaudreuil, she discovers theatre.
So, in summer, they play games like Blind Man's Buff, which seems to have been a game they particularly enjoyed.
They play a lot of music, and above all, they enjoy the pleasure of conversation.
These were conversations with extremely trivial subjects that mostly revolved around people's relationships with one another.
The queen loves local gossip and does not hide her admiration for the gossip of this small circle, always eager for witticisms, the Baron de Besenval. A flamboyant character, a master in the art of weaving intrigues, Besenval lives in one of the most beautiful mansions on the left bank, which has now become the Swiss embassy in Paris.
We are here at the Bayval Hotel, which was originally called the Hotel Chanac de Pompadour, built at the very end of Louis XIV's reign in the year 1705. This place is going to become one of the main venues for social gatherings in 18th century France, as the Baron de Besenval is a man with many connections and he hosts part of the Queen's society here. Baron de Besenval is Swiss and he is a military man. His personality is cheerful and dynamic. He is not afraid of anything and gets involved with great generosity in everything he does. Baron de Besenval is not a man of half measures. Here Baron de Besenval gathers his friends, and he who is a bit of a gossip, who is a bit of a parrot, who loves court gossip, tells here in his friendly circle the little rumours, and people jostle to join Baron de Besenval's dinner. Marie Antoinette experiences a certain frustration from not being able to enjoy as much as she would like the charm of this Parisian life, which, in the end, is much more entertaining than life at Versailles.
Accustomed to libertinism, often too sure of themselves, these favorites of the Queen sometimes allow themselves to make some inappropriate advances towards Marie Antoinette.
She does not really like those who start wanting to seduce her. She enjoys the company of men, she likes compliments, but she wants to keep her distance. It is not a matter for her to be too familiar with men.
Man, in her mind, is not primarily the partner of an intimate life. Man is the mirror to her femininity, and in this mirror she loves to contemplate herself.
If in the Queen's mind there is no romantic ambiguity, the same cannot be said for the aristocrats at court. As proof, the episode of Marie Antoinette's measles in the spring of 1779 that caused a lot of commotion.
Marie Antoinette had measles. She was treated as appropriate, but she was bored and had demanded to have 4 live-in nurses with her: the Duke of Lauzun, Count Esterhazy, the Duke of Coigny, and Besenval. They were there to tell her stories, to entertain her. And the king let it happen. This story caused a scandal, of course, because it was considered unworthy of a Queen of France to have 4 male live-in nurses.
All these aristocrats that were shocked that Marie Antoinette welcomes a small coterie near her are mainly shocked because they themselves are not invited. There is a lot of jealousy in the remarks that were spread.
Marie Antoinette was very clearly criticized for surrounding herself with idlers.
Marie Antoinette does not see the harm. She does not suspect the magnitude of what is happening.
Often absent from her recreational gatherings at Trianon, Louis XVI nevertheless lets his wife have fun as she wishes.
He trusts her. He knows that she is fundamentally honest, which is true, and deep down he prefers her having fun rather than engaging in politics.
Louis XVI looks at the Queen's society with an eye full of indulgence because he himself has a sense of hidden guilt, because he knows she is not happy, and he knows that, in part, he bears responsibility for this suffering.
Married at a very young age, the royal couple indeed shows very little affinity. They have no common passion. Games, music, theater for the Queen, hunting, study, or mechanics for the King. Even their schedules differ. Marie Antoinette likes to go to bed at dawn, while Louis XVI wakes up early in the morning. Their only common point remains their dislike for physical love, and that from their wedding night.
What's happening? Nothing is happening, actually, at first.
They were united, married, but without the marriage being truly consummated, and don't have a child at first. You have to imagine the entire court worried about whether the royal couple has had sexual relations. It goes so far as paying to see the sheets. Their privacy is constantly violated.
A doctor was called. The doctor witnessed their frolics. Then he said that things would come gradually, that they shouldn't be rushed.
Marie Antoinette will write to Empress Maria Theresa, "My dear mother, you must understand that the lack of enthusiasm is not on my side. What can be done next to a wooden man?"
Marie-Thérèse is devastated. No heir is arriving to solidify the political alliance between France and Austria. Her daughter could be repudiated. She decides to send her son, Joseph II, to the young couple's rescue.
Joseph II comes to Versailles, and he speaks to his sister and to his brother-in-law.
He gave revelations about the very nature of Louis XVI's sexuality. So, he wrote that the king penetrated the queen, stayed there without moving for a few moments, and then withdrew without having ejaculated. Joseph II played the role of marital counselor, and sometime later, Louis XVI was able to write to him that he had achieved the great work. All contemporaries agree that Fersen is one of the most handsome men of the time. He is tall, he has dark eyes, he has a regular face, he has a muscular body, and he seems impassive. People talked about a fiery soul under an icy exterior, and all the women are in love with him.
He is a proud man, very aware of who he is, and a bit mysterious. Fersen is Swedish. He is from a very prominent family, the court of Sweden. It is said there are in the world France, Sweden, and the Fersens.
The Fersens, during the time of King Gustav III, are one of the most envied and admired families in Sweden. The location of their palace in Stockholm is a testament to that. They represent an unmistakable standard in the eyes of all.
We are here on the terrace of the Fersen Palace. This place is absolutely iconic because, as you can immediately see, this terrace overlooks Stockholm, faces the royal palace, and perfectly illustrates what the Fersen family is all about. The Fersen are a very powerful family, both socially and politically. Financially, they own mines and the East India Company. They have numerous connections throughout Europe.
This illustrious family also owns several residences throughout the country, like Steninge, but also the castle of Hofstad, located 200 kilometers southwest of the Swedish capital. It is Axel's favorite residence.
This is the property where Axel de Fersen spent his entire childhood, all his summers. So it's a place full of emotion, full of memories, and we can see it clearly here. We're in a room with all these portraits of the Fersen family and intimate objects like this clavichord he took everywhere with him, just like his travel bed. So Fersen will have an itinerant life for a fairly simple reason. Here in Sweden, Fersen has no place. There is another Axel de Fersen. It's his father. His father occupies the entire political scene, so we must imagine our Axel de Fersen in search of a destiny he has to find.
This destiny unfolds in France during a fancy dress ball at the Paris Opera in 1774. A providential meeting between a beautiful black domino, Marie Antoinette, and the handsome, mysterious man. The two young people speak. Fersen does not yet know that it is Marie Antoinette, but they connect while waiting for life to bring them together once more.
In 1778, while the queen is pregnant, this young aristocrat is presented at court, and Marie Antoinette, upon seeing him, says, "Ah, but it is a former acquaintance,"
which shows that she did not forget this meeting of January 1774. And Marie Antoinette will experience love at first sight, it must be said. She has a shock, an emotional, very deep sentimental shock, which probably lead her into the depths and revealed herself. She didn't seek love. Love came to her. And she truly falls in love with him, but it's an impossible love.
It was not noticed that Fersen had a crush on the queen, because Fersen always lived with very distant restraint. But it was seen that the queen had feelings for this man.
As soon as he returns from his military campaigns, the handsome Axel makes it a habit to go to Versailles to be with the queen who awaits him eagerly. Year by year, he has become more and more indispensable to her.
Fersen is an excellent advisor to Marie Antoinette. He is genuinely benevolent towards the queen, and I believe that in the solitude that was Marie Antoinette's daily life at the court of Versailles, Fersen was somewhat that breath of fresh air, but also the shoulder on which Marie Antoinette could rely.
This idyll takes place in one of the most romantic settings, the English garden created by the Queen at Trianon.
Can we imagine them both here, walking in this lovely nature? This garden is the expression of a desire, the obvious influence of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. It's a new language. It's that of the new Heloise. And of course also, it's the English influence, meaning a nature certainly tamed, but which seems completely natural. Marie Antoinette in this garden expresses, I would say, her character in its most intimate and personal aspects. It is a labyrinth of the soul, a labyrinth of the heart.
A magical place, with surprises and small monuments like theater sets. With her architect Richard Meek, the Queen has fake rocks erected, straight out of a painting by Hubert Robert, but also a temple celebrating love and an octagonal belvedere overlooking the estate.
Here, the Queen can indulge in one of her absolute pleasures, music. She plays the harp very beautifully and sings the fashionable melodies of the time. With whom? With Axel de Fersen, of course. It is also a way to express their affection before a supportive and, of course, admiring audience. Behind this gate, in fact, the Holy of Holies, the Queen's absolute intimacy, where only the very best of her friends can enter. As you can see, the cave is really quite small. Barely can 2 people fit. Here, the Queen is a woman. She is no longer just the Queen of France. While the water gently falls from this very small cascade, she converses with Axel. It's enough for rumors to spread, for gossip to settle in. What is the Queen really doing here? Mystery. There, 2 small arrow slits allow seeing if intruders come. The possibility is then given to Marie Antoinette to slip away discreetly via this small staircase leading to a hidden door that allows her to reach the garden.
This closeness with Axel de Fersen will be much blamed on Marie Antoinette, even if no one really knows, over the course of these 20 years of relations, how far the Queen and her handsome confidant went.
They say they might have been restrained lovers who allowed themselves a few caresses, etc. I think it seems very difficult for me to imagine. Firstly, because Marie Antoinette is rather prudish and does not like physical love.
For them, it was probably difficult to cross boundaries, to have a true physical intimacy, simply because for a figure like Fersen, touching the Queen of France is somewhat sacrilegious. It's a relationship. It's a complex intimacy between Fersen and Marie Antoinette, and that's what makes it so beautiful, precisely.
Marie Antoinette is coquettish. She likes to please men, she likes to please the court. She is very proud of it. She is the Queen of France, and that she knows.
And she tries to surround herself with people who are able to help her in her desire to appear.
She quickly notices how some people in her own circle, notably the Duchess of Chartres, are very well dressed. And at Marly, the Duchess of Chartres introduces a certain Mademoiselle Bertin to the Queen.
Mademoiselle Bertin, or rather Rose Bertin, is quickly nicknamed at the court as the Minister of Fashion. Hailing from the Picardy peasantry, this young woman owes her meteoric rise to her talent and immense ambition.
She doesn't have a penny, but she has gold at her fingertips. She is not beautiful, but she has a sense of beauty. She will not fall into flirtation because she is someone who cares about detail, has a sense of organization, observation, and a concern for perfection that very quickly makes her stand out.
It's very new because generally the ones who dressed were men. It's the first time we see a woman setting the tone.
Miss Bertin is a bit like Miss Chanel.
Like the future Coco Chanel, Bertin founded her own fashion store, called Le Grand Mogul, located on Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré. It dazzles the eyes of the fashionable and is a must-see place in the capital.
Everyone from Paris and the court of Versailles goes to her fashion cabinet to see her, to get advice.
Imagine that she is in charge of workshops throughout all France. She employs 450 to 500 people.
It is therefore a commoner, an exceptional businesswoman, who Marie Antoinette chose to dress her, a decision that disregards all traditions.
Marie Antoinette preferred dealing with a true fashion designer rather than the court seamstresses who would impose outfits on her with a classicism she did not want. Marie Antoinette wants to be modern. She does not want to be like a court icon.
It is here, in the private apartments of the Queen of France, that Marie Antoinette got into the habit every morning of receiving Rose Bertin. So, let's imagine the scene. The Queen is seated, Rose is standing, and she shows the Queen of France the new fabrics, damasks, silks, brocades. The Queen touches, caresses the materials, compares. Rose, of course, has brought various sketches, different drawings, and the Queen chooses what she likes best. It goes without saying that these morning meetings between the Queen of France and a commoner who should not even have been allowed, according to the sacred etiquette, to enter her private apartments, arouse a great deal of jealousy. The court finally wonders what is happening between these two women. What secret is the Queen of France capable of sharing with this rag merchant?
Taking advantage of her privileged status, Rose Bertin likes to say that the Queen, thanks to her, is not in fashion. She is fashion. It is true that this unique duo, that of a sovereign and the most sought-after stylist in Paris, is the origin of models copied all over Europe.
In all the fashions that Rose Bertin was able to create with Marie Antoinette, I would say there is a common thread. There is a guiding principle. It is freedom. It is the freedom of the Queen and above all the freedom of the woman.
It's the era of Rousseau. Women no longer want the heavy formal dresses of the court with corsets. They turn towards other styles, towards other materials especially.
This freedom expressed through clothing is something that, very clearly, at the time, Marie Antoinette is not forgiven for. Confident in her talent, pushing the Queen towards transgression, Rose Bertin earns a detestable reputation at Versailles.
Mademoiselle Bertin has a dreadful character, a very strong personality that allows her to lead, to bring the best to the Queen. But at the same time, she ends up giving herself airs that still manage to annoy more than a few.
They didn't like Mademoiselle Bertin and said she was very ill-mannered.
For example, Madame de Lamballe had some sharp words with Rose Bertin. Rose Bertin tells her, "But if you are not satisfied, Madame, go elsewhere." And the Princess of Lamballe is devastated and goes to beg Marie Antoinette to reconcile her with Rose Bertin.
She becomes a true despot, a little dictator.
Empress of Style, Rose Bertin is nevertheless obliged to share her kingdom with another god with a golden touch, the hairdresser Leonard, an artist who claims to work with the comb, but also with the mind.
Mr. Leonard is a quite particular character. He is part of the Queen's household. He has a completely official title and takes himself quite seriously.
It's hard to imagine, but he speaks at the court of Versailles with a Gascon accent that he tries to hide as best he can. He's a mischievous, very whimsical man, one who loves to break free from conventions, who loves crossing boundaries. And Marie Antoinette precisely offers him this space and time of freedom by her side.
He creates for Marie Antoinette absolutely astonishing works.
Leonard is the creator of a fashion phenomenon that Marie Antoinette, like the entire court, adopted from its inception, the pouf. Structures of hair reaching dizzying heights at the risk of jeopardizing balance.
What we call poufs are hairstyles that start with natural hair and are mixed with other hair and adorned with all sorts of the most unusual objects. The idea is to stick to current events while mocking them a little.
So, there's the hairstyle for the reopening of Parliament, the bonnet for the revolt, because it's at the time of the Flower War in 1776. The frigate, since during the Franco-English War, the frigate of Belle Poule was glorious against the English fleet. They wear a ship in their hair.
We are truly in a period of absolute excess. There is no limit.
These poufs can reach over 1 meter in height and weigh up to 5 kilograms. They require hours and hours of work.
It was rattan frames, so that allowed them to go very, very high. And the material was mainly horsehair, real horsehair. And there were horses everywhere at that time. So for example, this is a real ponytail. Once prepared, it looks like this, a very, very, very special material that holds very well. There is also mohair, which is a sheep, in this case a curly sheep. And it is extremely soft and light, especially allowing for very fluffy things like here, for example. And so these materials also have a particular smell, in fact, so it definitely smells like the stable. It's anything but practical.